There's something about living by the water for 62 years. The smell of salmon and roasted coffee mingles in the Seattle breeze every morning. And it's become the rhythm of my life. I'm Grace Miller, and I live in Ballard, near Pike Place Market, where the sound is always watching. When people my age talk about grandchildren, they brag. I've been the exception. I worry. My name is Grace Miller. I'm 62 years old, and I've lived in Seattle, Washington my entire life, most of it in this small apartment overlooking Puget Sound. I'm sharing this story because if you're struggling with something similar, I need you to know you're not alone. If you find this helpful, please subscribe, like, and turn on notifications. We need to be there for each other in moments like this. I was a quiet woman for most of my life. 33 years of marriage taught me that family problems stay within the family walls. My mother's voice never left my head. What happens in this house stays in this house. So I kept silent about my husband's affairs, about my son's rage, about things I should have spoken up about long ago. My son Jason was always different. Even as a child, his anger came fast and hard. He'd break toys, kick the dog, and when his father laughed it off, I learned to look away. When he became a firefighter, a man who saved lives, I told myself the story I needed to hear: my son is good. My son is safe. I can rest now. That story broke when his first wife, Linda, took her own life. She was depressed, overwhelmed by motherhood, and trapped in a marriage that was suffocating her. No one said it directly, but we all knew. After Linda died, Jason was different. Emptier, angrier. And then he remarried. Emily seemed like the answer to a prayer. She was beautiful, stable, and ran a piano studio in Bellevue. Finally, Jason would have a partner who could handle him. Finally, my granddaughter Sophie would have a mother figure. I was relieved. I was so relieved that I stopped asking questions. Then Sophie started coming back different. It was a Thursday when I first noticed. Jason picked her up every other weekend. When he brought her back to my place on Thursday evenings, she was always off. Quiet, her eyes red-rimmed, her small hands shaking. I asked her the questions grandmothers ask. Did your stepmom say something mean to you? No, Grandma. Did your dad get angry? No, Grandma. She didn't answer the next question. She just whispered it, so quietly I almost missed it. Grandma, I'm a bad girl. That's when I knew. The wind was changing direction. For 3 weeks, I watched patterns. I noticed Jason's black truck at Emily's Bellevue condo on Thursdays and Saturdays. I saw Emily's younger brother, Michael, arriving with almost clockwork precision 320 p.m. 10 minutes after Sophie's pickup from daycare. I started spending afternoons at a cafe near Emily's house. Coffee in hand, watching, waiting, trying not to think the worst, but unable to think of anything else. Michael was the constant. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Same time, same pattern. He'd arrive after Sophie. He'd leave before Jason. My mind raced to places no grandmother should go. I bought a voice recorder online. $59. Small, black, unobtrusive. It arrived on a Tuesday, and my hands shook when I opened the package. What I was about to do was a crime. Recording without consent. Breaking the law I'd spent 62 years respecting. But my granddaughter had said something that overrode every law I knew. I'm a bad girl. I chose my granddaughter over the law. I went to Emily's condo when she was out. I had a spare key. Jason had given it to me, for emergencies. I told myself this qualified. I found Sophie's pink backpack and slipped the recorder inside, pushing it deep into the lining. Then I waited. 4 days. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat properly. Pike Place's salmon smelled like guilt. Thursday evening, Jason dropped Sophie off. The same routine. I let her fall asleep on the couch. Then extracted the recorder and plugged it into my laptop. The first few minutes were normal. Daycare sounds. Sophie's laughter. A car door closing. Then Michael's voice. "Hi, Sophie. It's Uncle Michael." Then Jason arrived. His voice was low and heavy. "Sophie, do you know your mom died because of you?" My mouse fell from my hand. "Your mom was so tired because of you. She killed herself because she couldn't handle you. Do you understand?" Sophie's crying, whimpering. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." "Shut up. And Emily is your mother now. You call her mom. Understand?" I listened to every word. The hits, the child's screams, and Jason's calm voice saying it was love. And then I heard something that made me stop the recording and cry. Michael's voice, later. After Jason left. "That's not your fault. Mom was sick. It was never because of you. Never." My suspicion shattered like a sandcastle. The monster wasn't Emily's brother. The monster was my son. I called Michael at 4 a.m., and he answered after 3 rings, his voice drowsy and concerned. By 6 a.m., we were sitting in a cafe booth near Pike Place. The recorder between us on the table. I played it for him. All of it, his face drained of color. When it ended, he put his hand over his mouth and didn't speak for a long time. "He hits her," I said. It wasn't a question. Michael nodded slowly. "Almost every day. With his hands, his belt. Once she hit the wall." "Why didn't you report it?" "I was afraid." His voice shook. "Jason has a lawyer. He'd fight this in court, and Emily would lose her business, her custody. And Sophie would be left with him anyway. I didn't know what to do. I'm going to report this. If you do, they'll use that recording against you. Privacy violations. Illegal recording. The evidence could be thrown out, and Jason might walk free." "I know. And Sophie will have to testify. She'll have to say it all again." "I know." He looked at me with something like awe. "Are you sure?" I handed him the recorder. "I'm tired of being silent." The lawyer's office was downtown. She was a woman in her 50s who'd handled dozens of abuse cases. On her wall were certificates for child protection advocacy. "This recording won't be admissible in Washington," she said flatly. "Dual consent state. You recorded without Jason's permission." My heart sank. "So what do I do?" "Report it to Child Protective Services. Your testimony, combined with their investigation, will create a proper record. Medical exams. Documentation. That becomes evidence. How long? Weeks. Maybe months. Months. During which Sophie would keep going to his house." I reported it on a Tuesday. The social worker was a young woman, professional and gentle. She listened to the recording, took notes, and looked at me directly. "This will require an interview with Sophie. She'll need to talk about what happened." "I understand. This will traumatize her further. And she may eventually resent you for putting her through it." My throat tightened. "She's already traumatized. At least now someone will listen. When I picked Sophie up from the interview, she was quiet. Smaller somehow. That night, I held her hand and showed her that recording, the part where Michael's voice came through. "That's your uncle," I told her. "He loves you. And he's right. Everything that happened isn't your fault." She cried. And for the first time, she cried the kind of tears that heal instead of hurt. "I'm a bad girl." Those words lived in my head for 3 weeks. Every Thursday when Sophie came home from her dad's place, they returned. Her fingers in her mouth. Nighttime accidents. Clinginess that broke my heart. I called Jason directly. "Why is Sophie like this when she comes back from your house?" His voice snapped immediately. "Like what? What did she tell you?" "She says she's a bad girl. She's terrified." Silence. Then coldness. "That's not your concern, Mom. Sophie is our daughter. We handle it." "Jason, He hung up. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed forming and reforming plans, each one less realistic than the last. Call the police? With what evidence? Go to court? With what grounds? But I had to do something. So I started driving to Bellevue. Emily's condo was new, modern, perfectly manicured in that unsettling way of new money. I'd sit in a parked car with coffee from Pike Place, watching. The pattern became clear by the second week. Every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 3:20 p.m., Michael would arrive. 10 minutes after Sophie's daycare pickup. He'd use a code to enter. He'd disappear inside. And when Jason's black truck pulled up, Michael would leave. It took 3 days for me to piece together what my gut was screaming. I didn't want to believe it. But belief wasn't a choice anymore. I researched voice recorders on my laptop like a criminal. Which I was about to become. $59. 2-day shipping. The box arrived on a Tuesday, and I held it for 10 minutes before opening it, understanding the line I was about to cross. I was breaking the law. I was violating privacy. I was becoming the kind of person I'd never imagined I'd be. But my granddaughter had said, "I'm a bad girl." I used the spare key. Emily was out teaching piano. I found Sophie's pink backpack, the one with Korean Academy embroidered on it, and slipped the recorder deep inside. When I left the condo, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the key in the ignition. 4 days of waiting. 4 days of not eating. 4 days of replaying worst-case scenarios in my mind. Thursday evening, Jason dropped her off. Normal routine. I tucked Sophie into bed, then retrieved the recorder and connected it to my laptop. I pressed play. The first sounds were daycare. Children's laughter. Papers rustling. A car door. Then Michael's voice, gentle and careful. "Hi, Sophie. It's Uncle Michael." My stomach tightened. More sounds. Michael and Sophie talking. A car arriving. A door opening. Jason's voice came through low and heavy. "Sophie, do you know your mom died because of you?" The mouse slipped from my fingers. "Your mom was so tired. Your mom couldn't take care of you anymore. Do you know that?" Sophie's whimper. I'm sorry. Be quiet. And Emily is your mom now. Your real mom is gone because she couldn't handle being your mother. This is what happens when you're a bad girl. Understand?" There was a sound. A sharp sound. Like skin on skin. Sophie screamed. "Stop crying. When you act like this, it makes me sad. And when you make me sad, I have to teach you." This is how I teach you. This is love. More sounds. Worse sounds. I stopped the recording. I couldn't listen anymore. But then I heard something else. A new voice, tender and desperate. That's not your fault. Michael's voice, after Jason had left. Mom wasn't okay. That wasn't about you. That was never about you. Do you understand? My suspicion shattered completely. The monster wasn't my son's brother-in-law. The monster was my son. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch holding Sophie's small hand, noticing for the first time the bruises on her arms. Summer clothes had hidden them. Her neck, her ears, small purple marks that I'd been too blind to see. My heart broke, but at the same time, something crystallized inside me. Silence was ending. It was time to fight. I called Michael at dawn. He answered groggy and confused. Michael, can you meet me? Now? What's wrong? I can't explain on the phone. Please. Pike Place was nearly empty that early. Michael arrived still half asleep, then saw my face and the recorder on the cafe table. I pressed play. I watched his face as he heard what I'd heard. The casual cruelty. The justifications. The violence dressed up as love. When it ended, he had his hand over his mouth. He beats her, I said. Not a question. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. Almost every day. His hands. His belt. Once he threw her against the wall. Why didn't you report it? I was scared. His voice broke. Jason is stronger than me. He has a lawyer. If I report him, he'll fight in court, and Emily will lose her business, her custody. And Sophie will still be with him. I didn't know what to do. I'm going to report this. To CPS. To the police. To anyone who will listen. If you do, Michael said slowly, they'll use that recording against you. Illegal recording. Privacy violation. The evidence could be inadmissible. Jason might walk free, and Sophie will have to testify. She'll have to live through it again. I understood. Every word of it. Are you still going to do it? I handed him the recorder. I'm done being silent. The lawyer's name was Margaret Chen. Her office was downtown. Walls covered with certificates for child advocacy. She listened to the recording without expression. The recording is inadmissible in Washington, she said finally. Dual consent statute. You recorded without his knowledge. Then how do we prove this? Report to CPS. Your testimony plus their investigation creates a legal record. Medical exams. Documentation. That's admissible evidence. How long? Weeks. Possibly months. I understood what she wasn't saying. During those weeks, Sophie would keep going to Jason's house. The CPS social worker was a young woman named Derek, professional but kind. She listened to the recording, took extensive notes, and looked at me directly. This is a serious allegation. We'll need to interview Sophie. When? Next week, if possible. In our office. With a trauma-informed interviewer. Will she be okay? Interview process can be re-traumatizing. And she may eventually feel angry that you initiated this process. Children sometimes resent the person who uncovers the truth, even when that person is trying to protect them. My throat constricted. She's already living with the trauma. At least now someone official is listening. The week before Sophie's interview, I barely slept. I held her at night, memorizing the feel of her small body, the weight of her trust. I kept telling myself this is the right thing. This is the only thing. But doubt crept in at 3 a.m., as doubt does. That Thursday, I picked Sophie up from school and drove to CPS. The interview room was bright and safe-looking. Toys on the floor, pictures on the walls. A trauma-informed interviewer named Ms. Hayes smiled gently at Sophie. "We're just going to talk. You can tell me anything, okay?" I waited outside in the hallway, my back against the cold wall. Through the small window, I watched my granddaughter's mouth move, watched her point to the anatomical doll, watched her relive the worst parts of her life. My chest shattered into 1,000 pieces. "Jason called that evening. What did you do?" His voice was quiet. "Dangerous," I reported. "CPS came to my house. They talked to Emily and Michael. They talked to Sophie." "What did you tell them?" "The truth. You destroyed my life, my job, my reputation." "Over what? A child's fantasy?" "Sophie's always been sensitive, always making things up." "Stop. You betrayed me. You betrayed our family." I heard the pain underneath the rage. Genuine pain. The pain of a man who'd been exposed. "I did it to save your daughter." "She's not your daughter. She's mine." "Then act like it," I said, and hung up. That night, I held Sophie while she slept, and I made a promise to us both: whatever comes next, I will not let you go. The morning after the interview, Michael called. "CPS is opening a full investigation. They want to interview Emily and me as corroborating witnesses. They want medical records. They're taking it seriously." "And Jason? He knows. He's calling lawyers. He's angry." I knew what that anger looked like. I'd lived with it my whole life. The following Wednesday, my lawyer called. "Jason's filed a motion to suppress the recording and all evidence derived from it. He's claiming privacy violation, illegal surveillance, and parental alienation." "Can he do that?" "He can try. The judge will decide if the recording is admissible. But regardless of that ruling, CPS has opened their own investigation now. Their findings can be used independently." "What are my chances?" A pause. "Honest? It's complicated. Jason has resources. He has a good lawyer. But you have consistent testimony, medical evidence forming, and a child who's displaying clear signs of abuse. I'd say it's possible. Possible. That's what I was betting everything on." 2 weeks of limbo. Sophie's interview was analyzed. Medical exams were scheduled. Emily and Michael gave statements. Jason refused to cooperate. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Derek from CPS. "We have enough to recommend criminal investigation. We've also recommended temporary custody change to you pending further proceedings." "When?" "A family court hearing is scheduled for April 15th. 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, I would have to stand in a courtroom and testify against my own son." I didn't tell Sophie for as long as I could. I wanted her to have a few more weeks of childhood, of not knowing that grown-ups were making big decisions about her life. But she figured it out, the way children do. "Is Daddy in trouble?" she asked one night, small voice in the dark. "Your daddy is. Getting help. Getting better. And you're going to stay with me for a while. Because he hurt me?" I couldn't lie to her anymore. "Yes." She was quiet for a long time. "I don't want him to be in trouble." "I know, sweetheart. But he hurt you, and hurting people is wrong. Even when they're people we love. Will he still be my daddy?" My heart nearly broke in two. "Yes." But he can't be the daddy who hurts you. We're going to help him learn a different way." The week before the hearing, I received a letter from Jason. Through his lawyer. His handwriting was thick and angry on the envelope. Inside, the letter said, "Mom, I don't know who you are anymore. You've destroyed everything. My career, my reputation. And for what? Sophie needed discipline. She needed structure. Now she thinks I'm a monster. You made her think that. If you had just trusted me, we could have worked this out quietly. Instead, you dragged us all through the system like animals. I will never forgive you for this. And someday, Sophie won't forgive you either." I read it 6 times. The anger in his words was real. The pain was real, but so was Sophie's trauma. And so was my choice. The courthouse steps. The day of the hearing. Jason was there with his lawyer. His face was hard, closed. When he saw me, he looked through me like I was glass. That hurt terribly, but I kept walking. In the courtroom, the judge was a woman in her 60s. Steady eyes, no nonsense expression. The CPS social worker testified first. Medical findings, consistent statements from Sophie, interview recordings, the pattern of abuse. Jason's lawyer fought back hard. This recording was obtained illegally. The evidence should be inadmissible. The child has been coached by her grandmother. There's no corroboration except from family members with bias. We have medical documentation, the prosecutor countered. We have consistent statements from multiple independent witnesses. This isn't just one person's word. The judge listened. She said nothing. Then Michael testified. Calm, precise, devastating. I heard him hit her. I heard her scream. I told her afterward that it wasn't her fault. That was the extent of my involvement. Why didn't you report it? I was afraid, but I should have been braver. I'm sorry. Then Emily, her sleeve rolled up to show the bruises Jason had given her in anger. He told me it was how he showed love. That if I couldn't take it, I wasn't strong enough to be Sophie's mother. Finally, I testified. My hands shook. My voice almost didn't carry across the courtroom. But I told them everything. About Sophie saying she was a bad girl. About the months of watching. About the recorder. About every word I heard. Why did you do this? My lawyer asked gently. Because no one else would listen to her. You recorded your son without his consent. I did, and I'd do it again. The courtroom was silent. Jason's lawyer tried to paint me as a vindictive mother, bent on destroying her son. It was a good argument. Compelling, sympathetic even. But it didn't change the facts. When the judge spoke, her voice was measured and final. Based on the evidence presented, I find sufficient grounds for temporary custody transfer to the maternal grandmother. CPS will continue its investigation. The father is ordered to complete a mental health evaluation and anger management course. Visitation is suspended pending further review. The gavel came down like a period at the end of a sentence. I cried, for the first time publicly. Afterward, Michael hugged me. Emily hugged me. Even my lawyer smiled a small, professional smile, but genuine. Jason didn't say anything. He just left, his lawyer behind him, his back straight and his face hard. That night, I picked Sophie up from the CPS office. She'd been waiting, coloring a picture. When she saw me, she ran. "Grandma, can I stay?" "Yes, baby. You're staying with me. For always? For as long as you need me. That night, driving home through Seattle streets lit gold by the setting sun, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. But also fear. Because I knew this wasn't over. This was just the beginning. Jason's letter sat on my kitchen table for a week before I could read it again. When I did, something had shifted in me. The words still hurt, but I understood them differently now. He was a man who'd been exposed. A man whose damage had finally been named. A man who would either break or rebuild. I prayed he'd choose to rebuild. But that wasn't my responsibility anymore. My responsibility was the small girl sleeping in the room next to mine, finally sleeping without nightmares. The courthouse steps. The morning of trial. Jason stood with his lawyer, expensive suit and cold eyes. I stood alone for a moment and then Michael and Emily appeared. Emily's arm linked through mine. "We're here," she said simply. Jason saw us. His face twisted. "What is this? Some kind of conspiracy?" "Jason," I said quietly, "it's time to listen to what you've done." "I know what I've done. I've loved my daughter. And now you're all lying about it." Michael stepped forward. "I heard you. Every time. I heard what you did to her." Jason's eyes locked on his brother-in-law. "You're a coward who's too weak to stand up for the truth. The truth is she's 6 years old and you've convinced her she's bad. That's not love, Jason. That's poison." Inside the courtroom, everything moved with terrible momentum. The judge was a woman in her 60s. She listened without expression. The CPS investigator testified. Medical findings. Consistent statements. The pattern of injury and psychological distress. Then came the recording. The judge ordered it played. The courtroom filled with the sound of my granddaughter's terror. With Jason's voice, calm and clinical, explaining how pain equals love. With Michael's voice, afterward, undoing the damage with kindness. I watched Jason as he heard himself. His jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. He heard what he'd done. The prosecutor was methodical and relentless. Evidence. Timeline. Corroboration. Medical documentation. Jason's lawyer argued that I'd manipulated everyone. That I was a jealous mother trying to destroy her son. That Sophie had been coached. It was a compelling narrative. But it didn't withstand the facts. Michael testified calmly about what he'd witnessed. Emily showed her bruises and spoke about the terror of living with Jason's rage. A medical examiner described injuries consistent with repeated blunt force trauma. Then I testified. I told them about a 6-year-old girl saying, "I'm a bad girl," like it was a fact of nature. I told them about my doubts and my investigations and my terrible choice to break the law to save my grandchild. "Do you regret the illegal recording?" the judge asked. "No, I regret that it was necessary. But I'd do it again." The verdict came down like a hammer. Guilty of physical abuse. Guilty of emotional abuse. Temporary custody awarded to me. Supervised visitation only. Mandatory mental health treatment. Jason didn't cry. He didn't rage. He just broke. Quietly. Completely. I felt that too. Not satisfaction, but a deep, exhausted sadness. This was my son. And he'd hurt a child. And I'd had to choose between them. I would make the same choice again. But it would haunt me forever. That night, picking Sophie up from the CPS office, I held her while she slept in the car. Her breathing had changed, more peaceful, less defended. "We're going home," I whispered, even though she couldn't hear me. And for the first time in months, I believed it was true. Jason tried to appeal. His lawyer argued procedural errors. But after 2 months, he stopped. According to Michael, he'd started therapy. Real therapy. He was working in a different fire station now, away from the people who'd known him before. Slowly, he was becoming something other than what he'd been. I didn't know if that meant redemption or just survival. But I took it as a sign that change was possible. Meanwhile, Michael and Emily became constants in Sophie's life. Marverics in a new family structure. Broken people building something stronger than what had been. And me? I was just a grandmother who'd finally found her voice. It was enough. 6 weeks after the verdict, Sophie drew a new picture in her therapy room. The therapist showed it to me with a small, knowing smile. In the picture, there was a sky. In that sky, a woman with yellow hair, her mother, Linda. Below, on the green earth, stood 3 figures holding hands, me, Sophie, and Michael. "This is our family," Sophie had told the therapist. My throat closed. I'd learned something in the last 3 months. Grief and healing exist in the same space. You can hold both at the same time without one canceling out the other. I grieved for the son I'd thought I had. The son who'd been kind and whole and uncomplicated. I grieved for the years of not asking questions. For the silence I'd accepted as normal. I grieved for Sophie's lost childhood, the part of her that had been stolen. But simultaneously, healing was happening. Real, difficult, beautiful healing. Jason sent me a letter. Not through his lawyer this time. His own handwriting. "Mom, I've started therapy. Real therapy. Not court-mandated, but real. My therapist says I was recreating what happened to me, my father's violence, because it was the only model of love I had. That's not an excuse. I know it's not, but it's a start to understanding. I miss Sophie. I miss you. I don't know if either of you will ever forgive me. But I'm trying to become someone worth forgiving. I'm sorry." I read it in my kitchen at 6 a.m. Coffee steaming, the sun just rising over the sound. I cried. But they were different tears than before. Not tears of anger or fear. Tears of a mother witnessing the possibility of her son's redemption. I wrote back, "I don't know if I can forgive everything yet. But I see you trying, and that matters. Sophie needs time. She needs to see you change, not just hear about it. But yes, there's a path forward. We'll take it slowly." Michael started coming every Sunday. He and Sophie would draw together. He'd learned to listen in a way most men never do, fully present, without needing to be right or in control. Emily opened her piano studio again, bigger this time. The settlement money giving her the chance to build something new from the wreckage. And me? I became a grandmother who could say no to her son. Who could protect her granddaughter without guilt. Who could hold 2 truths at once: that Jason had hurt a child, and that Jason could still change. One morning in late May, I woke to find Sophie already awake, looking out the window at the sound. "Grandma, do you think Daddy's getting better?" "I think he's trying to. Can he come visit soon? For real visiting, not with the lady watching?" "Maybe, when Dr. Patterson says he's ready. And when you're ready." She was quiet for a long time. "I think I'm almost ready." I held her. And I didn't give her false promises, the way I used to. I just held her. What I've learned at 62 is this: silence is complicity. Not speaking up makes you a partner in the crime. I've learned that loving your child and protecting another child can require you to betray the first one. That's the terrible math of motherhood and grandmotherhood. Sometimes you have to lose to save. I've learned that legal systems and therapies and social workers are imperfect but necessary. They're not salvation, but they're scaffolding. They give broken people a structure to rebuild on. Most of all, I've learned that healing is not a straight line. It's messy and slow, and sometimes you take 2 steps backward. But it's possible. For Sophie, for Jason, even for me. Summer came to Seattle. The kind of perfect summer we don't deserve, where the sky is so blue it hurts and the sun lasts until 9 p.m. Sophie is different now. She still has hard days. Days when nightmares come back or when she's angry at me for taking daddy away. But mostly, she's becoming a kid again. Silly, curious, not constantly braced for pain. Her therapist says she'll carry this trauma forever. It will shape her in ways we can't predict. But it won't define her. That's the promise we're working toward. Jason asked for supervised visitation last month. We started with an hour at a coffee shop with a CPS observer present. He cried when he saw Sophie. She cried too, but I couldn't tell if it was from missing him or from the weight of what happened between them. They sat together quietly. He told her he was sorry. She didn't say anything, and that was okay. Forgiveness isn't something you demand from children. Michael told me recently that Emily got engaged to someone. Not to him, to a man she met at a yoga class. A normal man who reads to her and asks about her day. I'm happy for her, Michael said. She deserves normal. What about you? I'm learning to be someone's friend instead of their savior. It's harder than I thought. But better. That's the thing nobody tells you about trauma and healing: it changes everyone it touches. You don't emerge on the other side of it unchanged. None of us are the same. Michael learned to speak up. Emily learned to leave. Jason is learning to take responsibility. Sophie is learning to trust that when she says something hurts, she'll be believed. And me? I'm learning to live with what I had to do to save my granddaughter. Last week, I stood at Pike Place Market in the early morning, before the tourists arrived. The fish were laid out on ice. The coffee smell was thick in the air, and the sound was the color of slate. A social worker passed me on the street, a young woman I recognized from the CPS hearings. She smiled and waved. "How's Sophie?" she asked. "Better. Healing. And you?" I thought about that. Honestly. Also healing. Slowly. But healing. The truth is, I don't know if I did the right thing. I broke the law. I exposed my family's secrets. I forced my son to face something he'd been hiding from his whole life. I put my granddaughter through the trauma of a legal process. But I also saved her life. So I live with both. The certainty and the doubt. The relief and the guilt. That's the price of speaking up. Sophie's therapist asked her recently what she wanted to be when she grew up. "A doctor," Sophie said. "So I can help kids who are hurt." I cried when the therapist told me that. Not because Sophie wants to save the world, kids often say things like that. But because she wants to help people who are hurt. Because she's starting to frame her trauma not as a mark of being bad, but as a qualification to help others. That's what I'm holding onto now. That maybe something good can come from this. That maybe Sophie's story, our story, can give someone else the courage to speak up. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself either as the child, or the afraid family member, or the quiet witness, I want to tell you something. Speak up. It will be hard. You will doubt yourself. People will call you a liar. Your family might turn against you. The process will be slow and painful and traumatizing. But silence is harder. Silence is a daily death. A slow suffocation. An agreement that the pain doesn't matter. Speak up. For the child. For yourself. For the possibility that tomorrow can be different. Spring is fading now in Seattle. The cherry blossoms have fallen, and the city is turning green and growing. Sophie is turning 8 next month. We're planning a small party at the beach. Michael will be there. Emily will be there. Even Jason, I think, if the supervised arrangements work out. Not a traditional family, but ours. A grandmother who learned to break her silence. A granddaughter who learned she's not bad. A son who's learning to change. And a spring that tastes like starting over. The wind from the sound is still there, the same as always. But now when I feel it, I don't hear a warning. I hear a beginning.